Hi guys, Evolt here. Today I'm going to be showcasing my Shadowverse Evolve Abysscraft deck. This is the exact same list I took to the shop qualifier I participated in today, as you saw in my Twitter post with my deck list profile. And I'm just going to be going over pretty much my deck choices and why I played specific cards at specific ratios. Feel free to leave in the comments below of what you guys think about the deck. And with that said, let's get started. So first off, I playing 3 copies of Bellringer Angel. This card's just a generically good staple card to have. It's a one mana 0/0 attack 2 defense follower. Has a last word when it has the ward ability, and last word when it gets destroyed, you get to draw a card, and you get to pay 2 to evolve it. I am playing 1 copy of the evolution in my evolve deck. Its effect is on evil. It still keeps the ward ability and a last word to draw a card when it's destroyed, but also has an on-evo effect. Is when you evolve this follower, you can choose an enemy follower and deal it 2 damage. Pretty much clearing away is a pretty good early game, good source of early game removal against 2 defense followers, or sometimes you just need to stick 2 damage early. And especially in this, my build doesn't really have a lot of good turn 2 mana plays, so sometimes I will just spend 2 mana points to evolve the Bellringer I played at the very beginning of the game, just to get rid of a follower I really don't want my opponent to have. Generally, you just want to be up on card advantage, and Bellringer Angel and its evolved form does facilitate that type of gameplay. Most importantly, being a 1/0 ward means you have, for 1 mana, you effectively have a blocker on your board to just soak up damage, or maybe protect a follower that you really don't want your opponent to answer right away. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Ambling Wraith. It's a one mana 2/1 follower. It has a fanfare effect where it's an ability that activates when it enters play. When this card enters play, both leaders take 1 damage. Pretty much, you yourself take a damage, and your opponent takes damage. Very easy to get some early damage in, especially because in Abysscraft you really don't care about the damage race. Or not that you don't care about the damage race. It's that every early damage you stick is just more damage. One damage closer to your opponent hitting 0, which is pretty much kind of Abysscraft's game plan. It's also a 2 attack 1 defense follower. So pretty much when you play this turn 1, you've already dealt 1 damage to your opponent. And it's if they don't have, most decks right now, unless they're playing cards like Angelic Snipe, Angelic Barrage, they don't really have a way to remove this follower right off the board. So immediately, the very next turn, you can immediately start swinging your opponent in for 2 damage. The ability to also deal your own leader 1 damage is very important for an ability for the ability, the Sanguine ability that a lot of Abysscraft cards have. Pretty much activating the condition to fulfill the Sanguine effect, and Rambling Wraith is one of the key cards to actually enable those. So it's very important to play this at 3. It's pretty much a good card to find in almost every stage of the game, unless you have no Sanguine activators to combo it off with in the later stage of the game. But in early game, it's actually just an amazing 1-drop sometimes. There are moments where you actually do not play this at 1, especially if you have the earlier Bellringer Angel in your hand. You actually want to use this card and combo a lot with other Sanguine plays, one of which is the next card I'll be showcasing right now, which will be 3 copies of Skeleton Fighter. It's a 1 mana 2/2 follower, so it has 1 more defense than the Rambling Wraith. But what's more important about this card is it has a fanfare effect, where if Sanguine is active for you, or if you took a damage this turn, this follower gets +1 attack and +1 defense. So it becomes a 3 attack 3 defense follower. So if especially if you open both Skeleton Fighter and Rambling Wraith in your hand, sometimes it's good to pass turn 1 on the first turn, and on your 2 mana turn, you play the Rambling Wraith for one mana, and use your second and then you proc the fanfare, dealing 1 damage to both you and your opponent, and then you spending a second mana point on Skeleton Fighter, thus making it a 3/3. So now you have 5 damage sticking on the board, as well as especially at 2 mana, there's not very many cards that most crafts have that can easily answer a 3/3 right away. So a lot of times that 3 damage will stick. Your 2/1 Rambling Wraith can answer fairly quickly, just because that's 1 defense. But having a 3/3 skeleton by the second turn in the game is it's pretty obnoxious, especially when your opponent is just unable to answer this card. So really important. It's also a 1-drop, so sometimes you might just hard slam this at 1 just to have a 2/2 on the board. Pretty strong. and because it's a one drop, it combos very well in the later stage of the game when you have one sanguine proc, and then you're just comboing off with a bunch of sanguine effects. Next up is 2 copies of Soul Conversion. I used to be on 3 copies of this card, and I shaved it to 2, mainly because it does have it is a 1 mana quick timing spell. It selects a follower on your own field and destroy it, and then draw 2 cards. What this card usually does is it pretty much just replenishes your hand very often. And being having the quick timing means when your opponent attacks, pretty much is about to destroy one of your own followers. If rather than just let it get destroyed for no value, you can Soul Conversion it out by destroying the follower that they attacked, thus drawing 2 more cards, just replenishing your hand. The drawback to this method is you don't deal damage to the attacking follower that your opponent attacked with, so sometimes you might not want to do that. But the reason why I shaved it to 2 instead of keeping it at 3, just because Abyss doesn't really have good ways to draw. It's the primary reason of, especially in my local area, a lot of ways players are removing followers right now are through effect damage instead of combat. So if they use an ability that deals damage to my followers, reducing their defense to 0, I actually am unable to Soul Conversion on my opponent's turn. So a lot of times, I am forced to play Soul Conversion on my own turn just to get immediate value off of it. But the problem I found doing this play is a lot of my later on I have cards to show you, but pretty much later on in my turns where I'm using Ghost or Bats and I want to get free value off them, I have to actually keep an additional mana just to Soul Conversion out and get the maximum value off those cards, which means I have to most likely I have to delay the play by a turn, which Abysscraft sometimes just doesn't want to do it. The faster you can close out the game as Abysscraft, the better. You just don't really want your opponent to just get to the end of the game, especially against decks like Dragoncraft and Havencraft. Rounding out my one cost cards, I'm playing 1 copy of Angelic Barrage. This is an inclusion. I'm not an inclusion I had in my normal build. I included it very specifically for the shop qualifier, only because I don't really know what the scope of the players will be in a shop qualifier, because a lot of people do travel out to these events outside of their local area. So I'll be playing against not just people I know locally, but also people who did travel out. And I wanted to include this card just to deal with decks I don't see often. One of which is Forestcraft. Angelic Barrage is very good at preventing Forestcraft from getting out of control, especially when they're like on a bunch of fairies and Elfchild May. I just want to use Angelic Barrage just to take the free multi-kills a lot. And actually, Angelic Barrage actually came up in the mirror match during the event today, where I had a Bell Ringer on the field, and I had a Bell Ringer with Ward active. My opponent, using them as Abysscraft, had a 2-card combo to try to deal a bunch of damage, and because I had Angelic Barrage, it actually saved the Bell Ringer, and then they couldn't do the actual storm play that they wanted to do. So a really nice inclusion. It's a 1-of. It's not really good in every matchup. That's why it's only a 1-of. The best. I mostly included this strictly for the mirror match, and Forestcraft. Those are the 2 main matchups I actually included Angelic Barrage for. If I don't see it, it's not the end of the world. But if I do see it in my opening hand, and I know I am playing against Forestcraft or Abysscraft, I generally try not to mulligan the hand, just because Angelic Barrage is really important in that matchup. Next up are my 2 mana cards. So I'll start with 3 copies of Lilith. Lilith is a 2 mana, 2 attack, 2 defense follower. It has a fanfare when it comes. It has a fanfare where it puts a forest bat into my EX area, and then it also evolves for 1, which I play its evolve form for 2 copies. I play 2 copies of its evolve form. Pretty much Lilith, the bat that the Lilith summons sometimes comes in handy. A lot of times it's just having an extra follower on the board, especially again with Soul Conversion. On a follow-up turn, you can summon the bat and immediately convert it into 2 more cards, especially because Lilith summoned the bat just for entry, so the bat replaces the Lilith, and then the bat will also convert to 2 new cards with Soul Conversion. That's really important. Also, sometimes just having an extra follower to threaten your opponent is really nice, even though the bat is a 1/1. Let me just actually bring out the bats here, actually, so for reference. Even though it is a 1/1, it's a 1 mana 1/1 follower. Even though it's pretty low stated, but especially in conjunction with some of the cards in Abysscraft, leave just having any follower on the board, it just represents a lot of damage to your opponent. So your opponent, I actually caught some opponents off guard today where they unknowingly left a forest bat on the board, and I would through a series of cards made the forest bat very threatening, and also actually almost closed the game off of it. So look, and then I'll be talking about her Evo next. So when you pay 1, you can also evolve Lilith. When Lilith evolves, it becomes a 3/3 follower, a 3 attack, 3 defense follower. She's really the evolution is very important because it has the ability strike pretty much when this follower declares an attack. It gives your leader +2 defense, pretty much healing you for 2. In Abysscraft, every life point you can gain back is really important, especially because a lot of your effects do cost. A lot of your good effects do cost life or defense to your leader. So being able to just recover 2 defense is really powerful. In my round 2 against my dragon opponent, it's actually pretty funny because by the end of, I believe it was either turn 4 or turn 5 of the game, my dragon opponent was at 9 life while I was sitting at a healthy 25 life, and that's because I had Lilith attack 3 times and gaining 6 life off it. I lost some life just due to effects I was playing and stuff like that. Like I believe I did play a Rambling Wraith earlier. But the strike on Lilith is just really good, really important, and just having extra recoverability is really nice. And then the Forest Bat is also a nice bonus, especially for cards you combo off with, just having an extra follower on your board. So I really like Lilith. Lilith's a really good 2-drop to play right now. I feel like it's almost mandatory. There are some builds that just don't play Lilith, which is fine. There are other ways. The diversity is there, but I personally just really like Lilith just because it's just very versatile in what it does. Next up, I played 3 copies of Spectre. This is a 2 mana, 2 attack, 1 defense follower. It does have the Bane ability, which is when a follower has the Bane ability and it deals damage to an enemy follower, it will immediately destroy the follower at the end of the battle. This also includes if the follower does 0 damage. Doing 0 damage also is the same as doing damage, so Bane will still proc even if you don't do damage to the enemy follower. There is a Forestcraft card that just says the follower doesn't do any damage, which is different, which does stop Bane from activating. But if they use an effect where they drop Spectre's attack to 0, Spectre is still able to use its Bane ability to destroy an enemy follower. The reason why this card is really important because of its fanfare effect as well. So its fanfare effect is give your leader -2 defense, which means you take 2 damage. And then this follower gains Rush. Rush is an ability where the follower, even though all followers in the board in the game do have summoning sickness, where they're not allowed to declare an attack on the turn they enter play. Rush allows the follower to declare an attack on a rested follower, on a tapped follower on your opponent's board. So pretty much, if this card is really good for clearing out wards, just to pave the way for my stronger followers to do direct damage to my opponent, or to also immediately remove some annoying threats. Just for Dragoncraft, it'll be like Forte. For Runecraft, a lot, especially the D-shift matchup. I generally like to remove I will trade the Spectre in for a Penguin Knight, for one of their Penguin Knights, just to make sure that Penguin's off the board. Another good reason why this card. I forgot one thing actually. When you do use the fanfare, you also put the top card of your deck into your cemetery, so you do mill 1 card from your deck, which also feeds into another Abysscraft keyword, which is Necrocharge. Necrocharge counts the number of cards in your discard, or in your cemetery. So adding an extra card to this card just accelerates your Necrocharge, which for one of your most important pieces, you do need 10 cards in your discard. All around, it's a really strong card. It's a good removal spell, pretty much. Yeah, it's just a really good card. Also, it does enable Sanguine, so it combos really well with another combo card I'll be showing later. That's it for, and then rounding out my 2 mana cards, I am playing 3 copies of Razor Claw. Razor Claw is a 2 mana spell with quick timing. What it does is it deals 2 damage to your own to my own leader, and then I can either choose an enemy follower or choose an enemy leader and deal it 3 damage. Pretty much 90% of the time, I'm always going to choose to deal 3 damage to the enemy leader just because it's 3 damage, extra damage that goes into your opponent's face. The 2 damage that you take is a little bit daunting just because you have to be very conscious of your life total. But it also is another sanguine activator because it does deal 2 damage to your own leader, and it's just really good. Sometimes you do use it as a removal spell, removing 3 defense followers if you have to. It's not the ideal way to use Razor Claw, but it is an option that Razor Claw offers, which is really nice. Especially being able to play at quick timing if you leave overflow mana. You can let your opponent pretty much play out their turn. If you see something that you need to Razor Claw right away, like if they put like a bell ringer or something, you'll just Razor Claw it at the end step, just so the ward is cleared for you to go in. Or if they do nothing, you just tell them to take 3 damage through Razor Claw and quick timing, which is really good. Razor Claw is really important for closing out games as well. Sometimes Abysscraft, you are just short damage. Very commonly, I'm usually short anywhere between 3 to 6 damage, just because of my opponent's wards, or pretty much how the game flow was going. And Razor Claw is just a really, really easy out to close out the game, especially because when you're playing a spell, your opponent does not get any quick timing, so they can't do any shenanigans to prevent you from doing damage. Next up is the 3 mana cost cards. This pretty much makes up the bulk of the deck, actually. Abysscraft's 3 cost pool is really very diverse. There's a lot of good options in here. The best option, in my opinion, is a card called Crazed Executioner. It's a 3 mana 3 attack, 3 defense follower. And it has an evil cost of 1, so you can pay 1 to evolve it. And I do play 2 copies. Ooh, that's not it. And I play 2 copies of its evolution. Pretty much the main reason to play this card is to actually play its evolution. Its evolution is really strong. When it evolves, it doesn't actually get any stat points. It remains a 3/3 follower. But on evolution, you take 2 damage to your own. You deal 2 damage to your own leader, and then you select an opponent. They reveal their entire hand to you, and then you get to choose a card and force your opponent to discard that card. This is really important for making your opponent discard really important pieces. And most importantly, just having full knowledge of your opponent's hand at that point in the game gives you full advantage. I believe in the tournament I used this twice. Both times it was the first time was in the Abyss Mirror match, and when I execution, I actually ripped out the Razor Claw that's in their hand, just because I know how threatening Razor Claw is towards the late stages of the game, and my opponent only had 3 cards in hand. So ripping an extra card out, leaving with only 2 cards, and you know exactly what those 2 cards are, is really important, because now you're forcing them to go into top deck mode to throw you off. The second time I used it was actually against my last round Dragon opponent, where his hand was 2 Blazing Breaths, a Dark Dragoon Forte, and a Shenlong. I ripped the Shenlong out just because Shenlong is a really obnoxious card to deal with, and just being to remove pretty much my opponent's best defensive tool. It's just really important. Also, I do know the rest of his hand, knowing that it's a Forte and 2 Blazing Breaths, so he was forced to pretty much top deck the rest of his way through, because Dragon doesn't have a good way to draw it unless they open a different one of the many different cards that they play. There are texts that Dragon uses to draw multiple cards, but just having the ability to get full knowledge of your opponent's hand and force them to discard a card is really important. And sometimes it is counterintuitive, because sometimes when you do this play and your opponent, it really doesn't matter what card you discard from your opponent, they're still able to go full combo off. It is a little bit saddening, just because you did spend 4 mana and 2 life just to kind of do nothing, even with the knowledge that you have. So there are demerits to just crazy executioning, especially when your opponent has a large amount of cards in hand. But the hand, in my opinion, the hand knowledge is super important. Knowing, so you can plan ahead on your plays, especially because you're kind of an aggressive deck, so you need to know like what your opponent has in their defensive tools and whatnot is really important. Which is why I played 3 copies of the regular follower, just to see 1 copy in my hand, so I can immediately slam it down and evolve it into its evolved form. In a really low resource game where both players are running out of resources, Crazed Executioner is just really good at closing the door on your opponent, because then now you're forcing them into top deck mode. And unfortunately, if your opponent does top deck really well, it is really unfortunate, where there's just nothing you can do about it. But chances more often than not, if your opponent is top decking and you're not, you're pretty much in a good position either way. So just a really good card to have, pretty much a staple. I feel It's staple in every Abysscraft deck. Definitely a mandatory 3 of in the main deck, and a mandatory minimum 2 of in the Evolve deck. You can play a third if you do have the space, but I did choose to make room for other options because I do like the other Evolve cards in Abysscraft. But really important, if you do choose to run 3, it is not a bad choice. It is still very good. Just being able to have full grip knowledge of your opponent's grip is really good. Next up, I am playing 2 copies of Playful Necromancer, and it's a 3 mana, 3 attack, 3 defense follower. It also has an evolution cost of 1. This is pretty much the other game plan the deck goes through with its on its turn 3. I play 1 copy of its on its evolve form, which it evolves becoming a 4 attack, 4 defense follower. Its on evolve effect is it'll summon 3 ghosts. It pretty much summons 3 copies of this card here. Pretty much it puts them directly onto the field. It actually does not summon them to the EX area. It actually just puts them into play. Ghosts have the ability Storm, which means even on the turn they come into play, they are immediately allowed to attack enemy followers and the enemy leader. They do have a demerit, however, where at the start of the end step of your turn, the ghost does get banished, which means it gets removed from the board. It'll be a little too strong if you're able just to keep these ghosts alive for more than 1 turn, which is why it's really but pretty much on your turn 3 or turn 4 if you went first, you can play Playful Necromancer, evolve it into a 4/4, which summons out 3 copies of these ghosts. You can have the 4/4 either trade into a ward or trade into a tapped follow that your opponent had, and then immediately just do 3 direct damage because you do have 3 copies of these ghosts. Just go 1/1/1 to your opponent. It's really good. Just 3 extra damage as 6. It's really good. What's good about these ghosts, however, is that they do only last for the turn. So as I mentioned earlier with the spell card Soul Conversion, if you have enough play points, what you can do is you can play the Playful Necromancer, evolve it, summon 3 ghosts, have all the ghosts attack, and if any of these ghosts live, you can immediately Soul Conversion it, use Soul Conversion, sacrifice 1 of these ghosts, and draw 2 cards. It's just a lot of free advantage that you can get just for sacrificing these ghosts that are already going to disappear at the end of the turn, which is a really nice combo with Soul Conversion. But generally, it's just Playful Necromancer just represents 7 damage onto the board, which is really good. I was on a 3-2 spread, a 3 non-evolve and 2 evolved line, but I did shave it to 2 and 1 just because I felt it was after further test playing, I felt it was a little redundant to have extra copies of Playful. 1 Playful is usually enough for you to get through into the game, and I do run other options to summon ghosts to attack multiple ghosts attack, which is kind of the reason why I chose to shave Playful to 1. But if you, it is also still correct if you wanted to play a 3 in Playful Necromancer and 3 base and 2 evil split. I think that line's also really solid as well. I just personally had to make room to cut 4 other cards that I really wanted to play. Speaking of the cards that summon more ghosts, I am playing 2 copies of Phantom Howl. It is a 3 mana spell card, where its only effect is to summon 4 ghost tokens onto your board. So it's a 3 mana 4 damage spell to your opponent, or it just summons 4 followers to like trade out your opponent's board. Really, really good card. The only reason I'm only playing 2 is because I personally feel that I really don't like seeing Phantom Howl too often. 1 Phantom Howl is usually all I need to either do 4 damage to my opponent or just to clean up some weird board states where I do need to empty out followers. But my biggest problem with Phantom Howl, in my honest opinion, is that to fully effectively use Phantom Howl, you do need essentially an empty board because you do only have 5 board space in your battle area. So summoning 4 ghosts means you can at most only have either 1 fall or 1 amulet. Another thing is the ghosts, as mentioned earlier, the ghosts do not stay for more than a turn. So a lot of times your opponent is free to, if your opponent is able to, they can spend the next turn after you Phantom Howl to reset up on you, which doesn't really do you any good in my opinion. The best thing I use this spell for, honestly, is just to do 4 direct damage to my opponent, or sometimes more damage if I combo it with another card that I'll be showcasing later. Next up, I played 2 copies of the Monostrike. It is a 3 mana neutral spell. This card pretty much selects an enemy follower or an enemy leader and deal it 3 damage. Pretty similar to Razor Claw, except it costs 1 more mana. and does not have the quick timing, but it does have the luxury of not dealing 2 damage to me. There are, but the main reason why I play this card is just extra instances of spell damage that I can just hurl to my opponent's leader, just to close out games. A lot of the games in my testing before the tournament, I found that the combination of just holding both Razor Claw and Demonic Strike, representing 6 damage to your opponent, just lets you close out games really cleanly, especially because your opponent doesn't have the ability to respond to these at all. They can try to plan around it if they're expecting it. But just having copies 4 and 5 of Razor Claw just to do 3 damage to your opponent, in my opinion, is just really good. They're in testing, in locals, in playing in through locals. Quite a number of games I personally lost that were really close was simply because I just opened 0 copies of Razor Claw and Demonic Strike, and I am playing effectively 5 copies of Burn 3 to my opponent's leader. And even a lot of those times, I'm just short that 3 or 6 damage just to close out the games. And just running this is super important. You can also use this as a removal spell to remove a pesky 3 defense follower. But the primary reason to run this card, in my opinion, is just to do 3 damage to your opponent's leader. But it's just a really good card to have, really good card to close out games. And in my honest opinion, just having the option just to deal more damage to your opponent's leader is just really good. Rounding out my 3 mana cards, I play 2 copies of Path to Purgatory, the Path to Purgatory Amulet. It's a 3 mana neutral amulet card. Pretty much, it's fanfare. On play, you just draw 3 cards and then deal 3 damage to your own leader. Pretty much the primary reason to run, and it has a second effect where at the start of your end step, if your leader has 6 or less defense, you can rest this card and then send it to the cemetery to deal 6 damage to all of your opponent's followers. Pretty much, it is effectively a board wipe for your opponent at the end of your turn. The primary reason I play this card, honestly, is just to draw 3 cards. Abysscraft generally starts hurling its hand at the very start of the game. And if your opponent is answering your aggression with a fair amount of resources, you now enter a low resource game. Path to Purgatory is just a great, amazing way just to regain resources on demand. You are taking 3 damage, but again, in Abysscraft, sometimes taking any damage to your leader is just really important just to proc Sanguine. And I have, even though I have used it to proc Sanguine because I didn't have any other Sanguine enablers. The Sanguine combos with Path of Purgatory are very limited just because it is a 3 mana spell, and you as the Abyss player really want to try to end the game by turn 7 or turn 8, which means you only have realistically 7 or 8 mana to work with in a specific turn. That being said, it's just its primary reason, honestly, is just to draw 3 cards. If you play it on curve, which means if you play it right at 3 mana, it is telegraphing to your opponent that you don't really have an amazing hand, but just the sheer ability to draw 3 cards could just draw you 3 cards to just get all the gas you need to ruin your opponent's day, which is really nice. Also, another good thing is the burn 6 to all enemy followers is something your opponent does have to be cognizant of, especially because Abysscraft does have a lot of ways to manipulate its life by taking a bunch of damage. So your opponent does have to kind of be cognizant of how much damage you're able to do to yourself, lest they risk losing their entire board just because you intentionally set yourself to 6 or less. And if your opponent does have to either try to hit your life to 0 in one turn, or risk losing their entire board just on the next turn, just by nature of you just dealing damage to yourself, or if they fail to kill you from whatever life total you're at before. Really, really good card. I just like it. I really like it a lot, just as a raw card advantage regainer, as well as just threatening a board wipe and putting breaks on your opponent's offense just to try to end the game and put your life to 0. Next up is the 4-cost followers. I'll start with 3 copies of Righteous Devil. And he's a 4-cost, 4 mana, 2 attack, 4 defense follower. He does have the Bane ability as well. And he does have an evolve cost. His evolve cost is a little different from the other evolve I believe it's actually very different from almost every evolve card currently in the game. As of BP01 Advent of Genesis. Its evolve cost is give your leader -3 defense. Just to evolve the follower. and I am playing 2 copies of its evolved form. When it evolves, it does evolve to a 3 attack 5 defense follower. On top of keeping the Bane ability, it also gains a new ability called Assail. Assail is an ability followers have, is if they have the Assail ability, they are allowed to declare an attack on a unsuspended follower. So pretty much if your opponent decides to not ward up their ward and you do want to get rid of it, Assail will let you get through there. If they play another follower and not attack with it and not have it suspended to set up for another lethal turn the following turn, Assail lets you get bypass that and just attack that follower directly, hopefully taking it out. But because it does, Righteous Devil does have the Bane ability, it will immediately take out that follower alongside it. So this combination of Saint and Bell, in my opinion, is a really good ability, especially on an evolved follower, just because it just immediately deals with any sort of threat your opponent trying to set up on you that Abysscraft just normally does not have the tools to deal with. You can play cards like the 4-mana execution spell, but my problem with that spell, while it does give you the ability to destroy amulets, I don't like it just because it's not really a follower body that you can maintain on the board just to maintain offensive pressure. That's kind of the main reason why I swapped over to I'm playing the Righteous Devil package. This is pretty much where I had to shave the Playful Necromancer evil slots for. At first, I wasn't playing any, and then I realized a lot of my opponents were recognizing that Abysscraft really just can't answer followers that are not rested. So I ran into a situation where my opponents were just not attacking with their followers, setting up like pretty much an OTK turn with whatever life I had remaining, and I just don't have a way to deal with it other than pray. I draw like a ward, which I only put at the time I only played the Bellringer. So having the ability to Bane and Assail was just really good. It also has another ability, which is also which offsets its evil cost. Actually, so it has an ability where whenever an enemy follower is destroyed, you can deal 1 damage to that enemy's leader, and then you regain 1 health. So this works even if Righteous Devil is destroyed in that combat. So on the bare minimum, it recovered you 2 life and dealt 2 damage to your opponent. And honestly, recovering 2 life just pretty much makes it so that you only played 1 life to evolve the Righteous Devil, which is really good. Being 5 defense follower is also really key because a lot of the early game removal spells only do at most 3 or 4 damage. So your opponent does have to waste 2 removal spells to try to get rid of the Righteous Devil. And just being a 5 defense follower also means it trades really well with a lot of the trial deck 4 attack 4 defense evil followers very nicely, just so it'll always try to take 2 enemy followers with it. It's also really if you get into like the later stages of the game and you have enough mana, you can evolve the Righteous Devil, use a different follower you have on your board to like destroy it and not proc its damage, and then have it attack next. In 1 turn, procking its effect twice, which is really good. But and in the shop qualifier I played today as of this recording, the Righteous Devil actually put in a lot of work. One of my dragon opponents actually played Fafnir to destroy my entire board, and the Fafnir actually was indeed lethal to me. And I used Righteous Devil to pretty much, even though I took 3 damage early, I did immediately remove the Fafnir Devils on the board, so my opponent just could not just try to set up lethal to me. And also it also allowed me to find lethal just because I did indeed lose defense as well, which I'll get to next. Or not really. No, I can get to it next. Next I played 2 copies of Dark General. Dark General is a 4-mana 5 attack 5 defense follower. It has 1 simple ability, which is Fanfare. If Sanguine is active for you, it does get Storm, so it is allowed to immediately declare an attack if you are in the Sanguine state. Pretty much it is your game closer. It is the way, one of the most efficient ways for you to either bring the game closer to an end or just immediately close out the game right out, just because it does immediately do 5 damage. And being a 5 defense follower means a lot of the low-costed response spells are actually unable to just clear Dark General in 1 turn, which is really important. But I was originally running 3 copies just because I very highly valued the ability to close out the games. But as I played more and more games, I found that Dark General generally kind of rots in my hand or starts breaking me when I am unable to find Sanguine activators. Even though I do run quite a bit of Sanguine activators, at the time I was only running 7. But a lot of times I am using those Sanguine activators No, not 7. 7? No, 11. I'm running 11. I was running 11. But a lot of times I am using those followers to try to set up a better advantage portion, or there are some pesky followers I need to answer immediately. Pretty much a lot of the earlier cards I showed earlier that said Sanguine is super important. Usually, when I'm saying that, I usually mean involving Dark General. Pretty much, with a specific amount of mana, you're able just to attack with Dark General very easily. At 5 mana, if you have a Rambling Wraith in your hand, Dark General just immediately is enabled. Another combo I like doing at 6 mana actually is using Spectre to clear out any wards that my opponent has, and because I did lose 2 defense, Dark General is now able to get Storm. For 6 mana, you not only clear an opponent's ward, but also deal 5 damage to your opponent. Razor Claw also combos really well for 6 mana. If your opponent doesn't have a ward, then you just deal 8 damage to your opponent by taking 2 damage yourself, which is still really nice. And very unlikely, but if you ever get to the state, Path to Purgatory, if you don't, a combo with, if you Path to Purgatory, either drawing the Dark General or enabling the Dark General at 7 mana also just represents a lot of resource, replenishing a lot of resources for you as the Abyss player, as well as just enabling Dark General to do 5 damage. Just a lot of the Sanguine combos pretty much are tutored around Dark General, which is why I do play 2 copies, just because it is the main way for you to close out the game. However, in testing, I just found it to just rot my hand if I don't have the ability to do it, even though I am running quite a bit of enablers now. I did choose to slow down the pace of the deck to play a little bit more mid-range. So I do try to close out the game in the middle of the game, but if I am able to just quickly slam down Dark General, I do have the ratios do allow me to immediately do it. And then being a 4 mana 4 costed follower, it also conflicts with the Righteous Devil slot in terms of what I want to do for the line of play, just because Righteous Devil is a really good control tool to have, and also to settle on as well. So it just fights conflict. And in the tournament, Righteous Devil came up a lot more than Dark General. Dark General hardly ever came up. I really didn't need Dark General during the entire tournament to close out games. I just had enough damage outright, or I was just 1 resource off from killing my opponent, but Dark General wouldn't have solved that. So it's why Dark General is still very important, but I just don't play max out 3 copies of it, just because it does have its weaknesses. It's a combo card as well, so you just have to open another card with it for Dark General to have honestly any sort of value. So generally, I think a 2 ratio is good enough, but I definitely do think Dark General is mandatory in Abysscraft right now. It's just the only real way you have to close the game out in a very clean and efficient manner. For my last 4 cost follower, in my opinion, probably the most important card in the deck, even though it really doesn't synergize very well with the Sanguine mechanic, is 3 copies of Cerberus. Cerberus is a 4 mana 3 attack 3 defense follower. It has a couple of abilities. Of its fanfare effect is it chooses either a Coco or a Mimi and puts it into your EX area. If you are in Necrocharge 10, which means if on the turn it comes at the time it comes into play, if you have 10 or more cards in your discard, you get both. To describe Coco and Mimi, Coco is a 0 mana spell card, which says choose one of the followers on your board and give it 2 attack. This attack stat is permanent, Mimi is a 0 cost spell, which chooses an enemy follower and deal it 2 damage. So it either buffs your own followers by 2 attack, or deals 2 damage, or is a burn spell to your opponent's followers. And if you're at Necrocharge 10 when it comes into play, it gets both. You get both of these into your EX area immediately. It does have an evolution cost of 2, and it is the last 2 cards. I am playing 2 copies of my evil deck, which rounds out my evil deck at 10. When Cerberus evolves, it evolves into a 5 attack, 5 defense follower. It's on evil effect. It puts 1 of each, Coco and Mimi, into your EX area. So a lot of times when you play Cerberus without Necrocharge 10, you get one of Coco or Mimi, and then 2 copies of another, because you'll pick one of these 2 for the Cerberus fanfare, and then you get both 1 more copy of each of them when you evolve. And you have Necrocharge 10, you get 2 copies of each. Cerberus is just really important, especially on turn 4, where a lot of times your opponent either has a damaged follower, which Mimi doing 2 damage to a damaged follower just pretty much clears them out. Coco actually doesn't see much play early in the game. Coco actually has more value towards the later stages of the game, which I can go over the combos in a bit. But Mimi is generally the main reason why I play Cerberus is mandatory at 3, just because it just cleans up weird board states really nicely, and also baits your opponent into answering the Cerberus immediately, just because they really don't want you. When you play Cerberus without evolving it and just getting the Mimi to burn, which is honestly is a valid play at turn 4, especially if you have nothing better to do, and your opponent does have an annoying follower to get rid of. But another reason why you kind of want to bait your opponent into removing Cerberus is not only does it increase the Necro Charge counter for your next 2 Cerberuses in your deck, you also threaten its evolution, which your opponent just generally does not want to give you, because the evolution just generally represents too much damage on the board, especially if Cerberus gets left unchecked. So I see quite a bit of lists not maxing on Cerberus. I personally believe that Cerberus is a mandatory 3-of. It's just too good to not play, especially at 4-drop. Even with the other options I was saying earlier with Righteous Devil, Dark General, those do require a little bit of setup. Sometimes Righteous Devil is just not the right play, or you want to hold the Righteous Devil for like a more annoying follower. Cerberus is just all around just a really good card, and it sets up lethal very nicely, or just cleans up really weird board states. A lot of times what I do is Mimi is generally what I use. The Mimi, which deals 2 damage to an enemy follower, is generally the one I pick the most, because a lot of times I do focus on, I do want all my followers to pretty much just only attack the leader, but I do have to respect my opponent's followers, just because I really don't want them to either trade profitably against my own followers, or just represent more damage in the damage race, especially in the Swordcraft matchup, where in my opinion, Swordcraft has more offensive followers and just stickier followers to deal with, where Abysscraft is a little bit more fragile because my followers' defenses are a little bit lower. And I am also, to get my effects off, I do have to take damage to myself, which does increase Swordcraft's ability to find lethal very quickly. And Cerberus just is a really nice way to kind of like keep that under control. As I was explaining earlier, with the Ghost and Bats, the reason why I said sometimes I leave a Forest Bat and Cerberus does allow me to capitalize a little bit more on the Forest Bats as opposed to the Ghost. Forest Bat is generally, or another follower that remained on the board are generally my primary targets for Coco. And then Forest Bat I like using Forest Bat as the main example, because it is a deceiving card to have, because your opponent does have to kind of respect the Forest Bat, especially if you're hiding a Cerberus in your hand. Because if they leave the Forest Bat alive and you go for the Cerberus line, you could actually double up on Coco. And so you'll play a Cerberus, get a Coco instead. Evolve Cerberus, get 1 Coco Mimi. You can use Mimi to burn like a Bell Ringer or whatever ward. And then the Evolve Cerberus can also trade into that ward. And especially if your opponent is out of mana, what you can do is, because you have 2 copies of Coco, just stack them onto the Forest Bat, where now your Forest Bat is now a 5 attack follower that can attack your opponent's the enemy leader, which is just represents more instances of damage. It's why like the Lilith line is also really important to me. A lot of times I'll just secure the bat early, and if I have extra play points, I will just field the bat just to bait, see if my opponent will take the bait in killing it. If they kill it, it's no big deal for me. It's spending 1 mana to hopefully draw an attack to it, or they use a spell that costs play points. That's really good too. If they do leave the Forest Bat on the board and I do have the Cerberus line ready, I just use it as an immediate 5 attack follower, which is just really nutty. It just your opponent just doesn't see it coming, honestly. Oh, actually, continuing off from earlier, after Cerberus plays, if you have multiple copies of Coco just kind of sitting in your EX area, that's where the Ghost line becomes very handy, especially if you're using like Playful Necromancer or Phantom Howl to summon multiple copies of Ghost. You can then use Coco to spread across, increase the Ghost's damage output, to either trade properly into a ward and have the other Ghost swing into phase, or just have every Ghost swing into phase. And this 2 attack spell just kind of dealt 2 damage to your opponent's leader, which is just really good. Finally, rounding out the last card in my deck, I am playing 1 copy of a 6 mana card. I am playing 1 copy of Gabriel, which is a 6 mana neutral follower, has 4 attack, 3 defense, it has two abilities, one of which is Ward, similar to Bellringer Angel. Ward is just pretty much a blocker. It has a fanfare effect where when it comes into play, choose another one of my own followers, give it 4 attack, 3 defense, and the assail ability. The assail ability kind of is mediocre in my opinion. I generally don't use it very commonly. The primary reason I'm using it is just an extra ward that I can have. And similar to how I was explaining about with Coco Mimi and the Forest Bat, it's a similar mentality with Gabriel buffing up the Forest Bat now, because now the Forest Bat is now a 5 attack, 4 defense follow, which is a lot more annoying to get rid of. And it has the assail ability, which may or may not come up. And because you combo it with Gabriel, Gabriel has ward itself, so it will be protecting the forest, the buffed of Forest Bat that you have with Gabriel. Even more so if you had the Forest Bat with Kokomi, you can stack just a lot of attack onto the Forest Bat. Or another follower, like if you have like a lingering Playful Necromancer, a lingering Skeleton Fighter, like any follower you leave on the board can just get buffed by Gabriel, and your opponent just easily takes 4 more instances of damage. I was running the Alucard from the trial deck in this spot, but I found that Alucard is a one turn too slow, and most commonly, because the way I've been kind of playing the deck, I do leave Forest Bats or just like an unassuming follower on the board. And if your opponent chooses to ignore it, Gabriel just turns that follower into a threat, like, on the spot. While taking, like, it can even turn Bellringer into a threat, because Bellringer will now become a 4 attack, 5 defense follower that also has ward. And you can also ward up the Gabriel. But if you choose Bellringer, you actually don't have to ward up the Gabriel just because the Bellringer itself has ward. Or if you choose other followers that do not have ward, then you can have that follower decline an attack, and then use Gabriel to ward and protect the enhanced follower, just to do additional damage to your opponent, which is just, in my opinion, just really nutty. This was a kind of a last minute inclusion I made for the tournament, just because I felt Alucard just wasn't doing enough. But unfortunately, Gabriel never came up. Being a playing at 1 copy, I just never saw it. I am personally running 41 cards, so if you don't agree with the Gabriel slot, you can just cut it out and have and with the rest of the deck I showed earlier, it is an exact 40 card deck, even without the Gabriel. So you can choose to cut the slot. I just value the Gabriel just because it is a little funny, and with the way my locals was playing, and it does catch them off guard, and most importantly, especially in a shop qualifier where your opponent kind of is expecting like the norm stuff. Having a tech that can catch your opponent off guard, it's just I value very highly, especially because Abysscraft is very fragile. Again, you do take a lot of life damage just to kind of maneuver and do your plays. And while Lilith is gaining you life, while Righteous Devil is gaining you life, sometimes you don't have enough defenses, and your opponent just kind of aggresses you. Having just a 4th ward just does wonders, in my opinion. There were moments where I wish I had a 4th ward, and I just burned through all my Bellringers just to kind of buy a turn. And Gabriel does fill that niche, as well as enhancing a follower just to randomly find lethal. I think I personally caught off guard by it week 1 against a Havencraft player, because I left a unassuming follower on the board, and then he just buffed it with Gabriel, and I just like took way too much damage that I really didn't need to take just because I left the follower on the board. So it was a recent inclusion that could have come up. Unfortunately, it didn't, just because I never drew the card. It is cuttable. It is shaveable. If you just copy the list I showed just now exactly and shave the Gabriel, it is still a fully functional list at 40 cards. I am playing 41 cards, so it is very nice. But I do value the Gabriel quite a bit. I hope to see it more in action as I played this iteration a little bit more for now. But for now, it is what it is for what it's doing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the deck profile. I do plan on tinkering with Abysscraft a little bit more. I am pretty comfortable with the current build. With just set 1 in the starter deck, it's kind of really hard to innovate. A lot of the ratios you could be playing, a lot of different tech choices that you have, are honestly like min-max ratio arguments, and also as opposed to how you as a player try to approach Abysscraft. How you want to play Abysscraft. Do you want to be very hyper aggressive, or do you want to be a little bit more conservative and play a little bit more control? Which Abysscraft does have the tools to. It just doesn't have the defenses right now. But with set 2, that does change, and I do hope to explore that a little more. I do want to explore the Forest Bat build soon, just because I find that deck really interesting, and it does capitalize on Gabriel a little more. But I think right now the Forest Bat build just doesn't have enough legs. It just doesn't have enough good cards to facilitate that strategy. Sanguine is just really the Sanguine engine is just really strong. Curse Executioner is just an insane card. Cerberus is a powerhouse on her own. There's just a lot of Abysscraft does have a lot of good stuff, and I generally do like the craft just because it's very flexible in how it wants to play, and the options you have to do so lets you go through with that flexible game plan. Yeah, it's just I like it a lot just because it's very flexible in what it can do, and it just offers a lot of tools. And again, this coming from other card games, just being like the sheer ability just to look at your opponent's hand and then plan out your plays from there, to me is unrivaled. I do value that very highly, and that's pretty much it. If you guys do like this video, just let me know in the comments below. If you guys have any suggestions for changes, I'm more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability as to why I'm not playing certain cards, or what did I think about this card. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. I do plan on trying to do more videos for Shadowverse Evolve. I'm a little bit passionate about the game. I did like the game a lot in the CCG form, and now that it's finally here in the TCG, I'm just really excited. It's kind of why I did take a little bit of a delay, just because I wanted to prepare for this game a lot, and I'm having honestly just a blast with this game. This game right out the gate, it's just a lot of fun. There are some unfortunate moments where your opponent just simply draws better than you, but that's just the fallacy of any card game. But the recoverability of this game is just really cool. Flexibility of plays is really nice, especially for Abysscraft. So if you guys like more videos of this, feel free to let me know. I can do my best to do more tech profiles for what I'm running and what I've kind of been experimenting with. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.